The end of the year is almost upon us. Greetings, dear friends. This is the Gorka Reality Check, and it is time to perhaps review the 12 months behind us and commemorate and celebrate those who made a difference. There is a tradition in journalism, at least in journalism as it was, to name a man or person of the year. The most famous publication, of course, was Time, that did this every year, chose an individual and put it on their cover. Now, I want you, together with me, to try and identify who our Patriot of the Year should be. In the past, when the mainstream media made their choice, sometimes, well, they just got it wrong. In the last 100 years, they've chosen individuals like Adolf Hitler as their person of the year. Not, I would suggest, a good choice. Somebody who, yes, changed world history, but not somebody we should celebrate. At other times, they got it right. They put people like Winston Churchill on the cover of their magazine as the man of the year. Somebody who I think it can be reasonably argued was the most important statesman of the 20th century and who saved Western civilization when he rallied the West against Adolf Hitler. But again, they get it wrong. Time has also chosen mass murderers like Joseph Stalin, a man who single-handedly killed, well, at least 8 million of his own citizens in the satellite sub-republic of Ukraine, not to mention everybody else that was hounded, tortured, and persecuted in the Soviet Union. So again, not somebody who we should celebrate as our person of the year. Far better to choose individuals like St. John Paul II, an individual who, along with Margaret Thatcher and our own Ronald Reagan, did more than anybody else to end the bipolar conflict that was the Cold War. The three of them together undermining the satellite states and the center of evil that was the Soviet Union, so those people could be free once more. Also, there are more recent choices. Shockingly, for the mainstream media, they even put my former boss, Donald Trump, on the cover as their man of the year. So, who should we choose? I'd like your input. I'd like you to reach out to me on social media, but let's have a discussion of some of the potential candidates for American Patriot of the Year. There are some obvious choices. Let me mention historically, I was touched because my parents escaped Hungary during the Communist Revolution of 1956 when they put a nameless freedom fighter on the cover of their magazine during that revolution to symbolize everybody that fights for freedom. So in 1956, the choice of that freedom fighter meant a great deal to me and people like my mother and father who fought oppression. But what about Americans? There's an obvious choice, of course, and that is Kyle Rittenhouse, a young man who at the age of 17 was accused of homicide, was accused of being a white supremacist, a nationalist, and a bigot, but who stood up and defended himself, took the stand in that multiple homicide trial, and acquitted himself well. We thank the jury. They are to be commended as well. And I also congratulate my Salem colleague, Charlie Kirk, for the recent exclusive interview he did for an hour with Kyle Rittenhouse to get to the inside, what really happened, what happened in the courtroom, what happened with crazy people like Lynn Wood. So congratulations to Charlie. Kyle Rittenhouse is clearly an obvious candidate for American Patriot of the Year. But there are some less obvious ones. Let me suggest one. Her name is Gina Carano. You may not have heard of her. If you're into science fiction, you will know exactly who she is. She is one of the most popular characters, or was, in the Disney series The Mandalorian, a Star Wars spin-off in which she played one of the key supporting characters. A former MMA fighter and action star actress, she was incredibly popular in that TV show. But then she made a big quote-unquote mistake. She spoke the truth about politics in America. And in an Instagram post that was retweeted across the nation, across the world, she made a very simple statement about what happened in Germany in the 1930s. The final solution, the Holocaust of the Jews, didn't start one day when a finger was clicked and people were persecuted and sent off to prison camps, labor camps, and death camps. She said it started when average Germans dehumanized their neighbors, which of course is a statement of fact. But because she dared to make a political statement in an America increasingly divided by the radical left-wing rhetoric of the Democrats, she was canceled. Yeah, a woman with an incredible following in that new TV show was fired by Disney. Now, she hasn't given up. She's fighting back. She's given interviews. She has become part of a new production team and is actually releasing a movie very, very soon. But I want to nominate Gina Carano as one of your potential considerations for a person who didn't back down in the face of the mob, who said something true and stuck by it. What about unusual candidates? What about a comedian? He's not exactly my style of humor. I grew up under Monty Python in the UK. But Dave Chappelle, well, he's come out swinging as well. Another individual who doesn't like bullies. Incredibly successful with his second Netflix special released just a couple of months ago. He was targeted, just like Gina, by the radicals on the left, especially the extremist pro-LGBT activists who didn't like the story he had to tell about the transgender friend he had who defended him publicly, was excoriated and attacked by the left on social media, and then who, as a result, committed suicide. Dave Chappelle has been targeted since he made those statements and told that true story. Even his former alma mater, the Duke Ellington High School in Washington, D.C., which he has been very supportive of, donated money to, is trying to cancel one of their most famous graduates. So Dave Chappelle could be one of your considerations. But it doesn't have to be an individual. As I said, in 1956, they chose an anonymous young freedom fighter in the revolution in Hungary to be the person of the year, to represent a category of individuals. Well, let's look at categories of individuals. How about the police in America? How about we nominate those who, in the direst of circumstances, we've got the figures in, more police officers have been killed, have been shot this year since record keeping began. I don't know. I truly don't. I've worked with a lot of law enforcement officers. I don't know how these brave men and women put on that uniform and that badge and that gun belt every day and do what they do, especially in Democrat cities and Democrat states. So perhaps we could collectively nominate the thin blue line of all those police officers who don't give up, who every day risk their lives for ourselves and for America, and who very, very rarely get the requisite thanks. If you look at the figures, it's shocking. The early retirements or across major cities are just off the charts. How these Democrat-led cities will survive is not known. So they need a sign from us that we have their back.